Welcome everyone, thanks for joining our session. Another one of the TSM webinars that we're running. We're going to be running them very frequently with lots of different content. Please do let us know and reach out if there's something specific you'd like us to address or cover for you that you think would be useful. There is an area where you can look at what's upcoming, and Rina will be constantly sending out marketing updates to let you know what the next webinars are that are arranged. So I'm Christina, one of the Proactis specialists or consultants with TSM, and I'll be hosting the session today. If you do have any questions, then please feel free to pop them in the chat. There's a Q&A section, I believe, within Teams, so you can ask away, and then I can address them later on at the end of the session, or one of my colleagues might be able to jump in and answer any questions that you have throughout. But if you could just mute yourself, if that's okay, while we cover off Proactis updates or P2P updates, product updates. So that's the agenda for today's webinar. So we'll be talking about some of the latest releases and some of the content, things to be aware of, how you can go about installing those updates, what the plan for that is. Okay, so product updates. So we're going to look at the recent Proactis patches. Obviously, there are many. We hope that the majority of you are on one of the latest versions, but you may not be. So we'll talk about some of the recent Proactis patches and highlight specifically some areas that might be of interest to you. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to cover off every single enhancement that's been included in the time that we have, but I will direct you to where you can locate the information for yourselves, or we can send it to you as well. So we can send you details of the release notes so you can view the full content. Okay, we'll look at specifically some of the new features, especially within the latest patch that's been released, which is 24.01, which was released this year. And we'll cover off some of the areas that in some of the very recent patches that were released as well. Okay, and I think it's important that you understand the patching process. We did run a webinar a couple of months back now, just talking about Proactis patching, what's involved. There were lots of questions around whether or not you can undertake the task yourselves or whether it does require TSM resource. We will come on to that. I will discuss it in more detail, and hopefully you can understand perhaps why we plan our patches the way that we do. Okay. I'm just going to show you, obviously, we're covering off today patching within P2P, so purchase to pay, those areas of the system specifically. So if you are looking to identify what enhancements have been made within source to contract or the other modules within Proactis, then we will be running a separate session in relation to those enhancements. So today we're just going to be focusing predominantly on the P2P side of and Proactis and the patches. If you are interested in any of these modules, if you do have any questions relating to the modules that you're seeing on the screen, I am aware that perhaps some of you don't know what they all do, then obviously please do reach out to your account managers and we can arrange additional sessions to cover those off. Okay, so this is where we're at. This is where we're at the moment. So we're currently within Q1 2024. The last release was January. I'm on 24.1, so this has been taken from my demo system. The next patch is due out. It's proposed to be in March. Obviously, those timescales potentially can change depending on the content. Sometimes patches might come out slightly earlier or slightly later, obviously depending on UAT and, again, the content that's planned to be within those. These were all the releases that were issued within 2023. Okay, so there's quite a few of them. There's more than one a quarter, obviously, but it just does depend on the content. And Proactis will dictate, obviously, when those patches are released. Okay, so the most recent patch, 24.1, the most recent patch that was released. I don't believe we might have installed it. Possibly. It will be, obviously we only install the latest patch. When our consultants are out on site, they don't patch backwards. They will always put you on whatever the latest patch is. Okay, that might not necessarily mean that they're enabling all the functionality, but they would definitely put you on the latest patch. Okay, so what's included? So I'm just going to highlight some of the areas, the key elements that you need to be aware of within this latest patch. So single sign-on has been enabled, SSO, sorry, for the web PMC. So previously, it was quite confusing just to get our heads around it. So there was the web PMC and there was another version of a web-based management console or management tool that was also available. There were kind of two, but we're just going to call it the current version of whatever the web management console is. We're going to just refer to it as the web PMC from this point forward, just to not confuse ourselves. This is the latest version. Okay, so you still have the ability to access the thick client PMC. That's still there. It still contains some functionality that the web PMC doesn't contain, but slowly things are being moved into the web PMC. Any new patches that are installed or upgrades that are taking place, our consultants we're allocating time to ensure that all clients have the web PMC installed on their environments so they can access it. Some elements are only accessible within the web PMC. They won't be available within the thick client PMC. Okay, so things are gradually moving over. There isn't a date as of yet as to when the thick client's PMC will be retired, but just be aware that some areas are only within the web PMC. So it is something that does need to be installed on your environment when you're patching. Okay. Single sign-on has been enabled for the web PMC. So up until this point, prior to patch 24.1, the web PMC only supported Proactis authentication. So that's Proactis login with a Proactis username and a password. So you couldn't use Windows authentication, you couldn't use single sign-on, none of that was available. And that was obviously an issue for certain clients. So that's now been introduced in the latest patch. So just to be clear, the web PMC doesn't support Windows authentication. It hasn't done up until now. We don't know whether it will be included in future releases, but at the moment it's not supported. However, you can use SAML or SSO to log into the web PMC with the latest patch. Okay, there will be additional technical resource required to assist you or to assist your IT team in setting this up. So as I mentioned, we will allocate additional time when we're patching specifically to this area. Okay. However, having said that, I mean, you don't have to use SSO or SAML to log into the web PMC. You can continue to use Proactis authentication if you want. It's obviously each organisation has a choice there. Okay. Upgraded output templates functionality. So the web PMC is required to use this new utility that's available. So it's a new utility that's available for you to design your output layouts. And when I refer to output layouts, that's anything that's being sent out from the system to a supplier or to a customer. So your purchase orders, once they're fully authorised, you'll generate an output, a document that will go out electronically, potentially to your supplier. Now, those templates were traditionally configured within the thick client PMC. They can still be configured within there. That's fine. I'm going to move on in a minute and just probably retract some of that statement. But there's a new tool within the web PMC, a new designer, that allows you to manage your layouts. It allows you to convert them and it allows you to configure new layouts. It's not just limited to purchase order layouts. It will extend to every type of layout. So that's credit notes, sales invoicing layouts, expenses, anything that's got a template behind it, including emails. So if you've restructured your email templates that get sent out, then those will be included as well. I will show you that feature as well. I do have additional screens to show you how that will work and how those can be converted. Okay, with the latest patch, sorry, I've lost my words. Previously, MS-XML4 had been highlighted as the security risk. It comes up when you run your scans on your server, and our clients have been wanting to remove that from their environment. So from the Proactis application server, there has been a requirement to remove that completely. However, you've not been able to remove that because Proactis had a dependency on it. So the Proactis application itself used that tool or that software, however you want to identify it. It was used within the output template. So the utility used to create your output templates was using that MS-XML4. Okay. For you to be able to remove it from your server, you need to make sure that you convert all your output templates using the new wizard via the web PMC. Once that's been done, you'll then be able to remove that from your application server. Okay, so Microsoft ended support for it way back, but Proactis still had a dependency on it. Now that dependency is no longer necessary because Proactis have developed the new output template wizard tool within the web PMC, so you can rewrite all your layouts. Those old layouts no longer need to be dependent on it, so you should be able to then remove MS-XML4 from your environment if you want to. Okay, but again, just the caveat is all those layouts have to have been converted first, and they have to have been tested and moved into production before you can remove that. Okay. So we'll come on to that. We'll talk about how to introduce that as part of the patching exercise. But I'm just going to show you some screens in relation to these output templates. It is quite a core new piece of functionality. So we are still testing it. So even though the patch is available and the patch has been released, technically it's available for download, although we don't recommend you download the patches yourselves and install them still. We are still UATing it. So TSM will test patches as they come out. We will test functionality, and when we're comfortable and we're happy that it's working as we need it to, and it can convert the types of layouts that we've been designing for our clients, then obviously we will encourage you to then book resource and to assist with converting those layouts, or provide you with the training. But we'll let you know when we're comfortable with that. Okay, so this is a screen of the old thick client PMC, or the one that the majority of our clients are using, and we use too still. Just to show you some of the areas that will be affected, where the layouts will need to be converted if you want to remove MS-XML4. So you'll need to rewrite your purchase order template layouts. So if you've got different layouts for amended, copy, cancelled, all of those need to be converted. Okay, request for credit note layouts. Now you may have multiple PO layout templates. If you've got different templates and they're all using different layouts, they will all need to be converted. Any VB script that we've written within those layouts will need to be tested. We'll need to make sure that all of that converts successfully using the new widget, the new utility. Okay. Sales invoicing. So if you're using sales invoicing, again, there's a layout that gets sent to a customer, an invoice that gets sent to a customer. Again, that will need to be rewritten along with expense claims and any of those other areas that you see there as well. So anything template based. Okay, so that's in the old thick client PMC. And this is the new web PMC. So just to show you some of the screens that I'm referring to. So within the web PMC, when you launch it, if you've got permissions, so obviously sysadmin will have permissions, and whoever else you decide to roll out access to within your organisation, they'll need to be given access to the various elements within there. So within reporting, we've got document data sources, and that's where the new utility lives. So for each of the modules, your access here, for example, I've got purchase orders. I can either choose to migrate an existing template, or I can add a new template. So adding a new template will create me a new output template from scratch. So I'll need to obviously pull in all my headers, pull in all my line information, build in my totals, everything else, obviously all my queries, if I've got anything else in there as well. The easiest way to do it is to use the migration tool. So by clicking on the migrate option, you can select the existing template, so which one you want to migrate. They have to be done one by one, so individually. So you select your template, it would ask you to give it a description, and there's a language there as well. Obviously, if you've got multi-language or multilingual in your system, you can select the relevant language, but I've just defaulted mine to English. And it will just bring through all the fields and convert it. Okay. By default, any script, any VBRE script that has been written previously will be grayed out or commented out, I should say. So that won't be active by default. So there will be an element of configuration required if you have any scripts. So when I talk about VB script or scripts, it could be anything. It could be something that compacts the address. So you don't want spaces in between your supplier addresses. So it kind of, removes those spaces, or any validation or addresses. So you might want a different company registration number coming up, or a different logo coming up, depending on the PO layout that you've selected. All of that will need to be checked and tested fully. Okay. So that's the new output template functionality, the new output wizard. And all of those layouts, just to recap, all of those layouts that you have within your existing system will need to be converted and tested prior to removing MS XML4 from your application server. Okay, but the facility is now there, which some of our clients have been waiting a long time for. Okay, I'm just going to highlight some of the additional new features. This is from the previous patch, not from the current patch. Expenses. So Proactis are investing in the expenses module as well as the other modules. So there's a variety of, obviously, enhancements that are included. It's not just in one module. But I'm just going to cover off some of them here. So attachments. So we do write validation rules to check whether expense lines have attachments on them, whereas now within the standard product, you have the ability to tick the box and say, ensure every line has an attachment on it. So within the standard product, you can set it to validate, and you won't be able to submit the expense line unless it does have an attachment on it. There's additional filtering on user roles within the web PMC. So this is only in the web PMC, but if you're managing your users and your user roles from within the web PMC, you can navigate to your users, invoicing role properties and your trays, and you've got filters there. Some of our clients do have lots and lots of trays, so it's easier to manage user roles by having that filter option available. Again, just going back, another patch, 23.3, so that was released in April. You can decide whether you want to include or exclude attachments on sales invoices and credit notes as they're sent out to customers and suppliers. So as you have with the purchase order module, you can choose whether or not to include attachments. So some organisations attach sensitive information to their purchase orders when they're entering them, and they don't want those documents being sent out to their suppliers by default. However, you can choose now whether you want attachments sent out with your invoices and credit notes. The current behaviour will always exist. You have to activate functionality to get it to work. So with an upgrade, it won't automatically turn anything on for you. There's additional languages, additional language support has been added. If you do have a system that has is multilingual, then obviously please contact us and we can arrange for additional scripts to be sent out to you to be installed. They won't be installed by default. We need to arrange for those to be sent out to you. So obviously just please reach out and contact us. Web services have been extended to include cancelling of purchase credit notes. So that was something that wasn't available in previous versions, but if you If you are bringing data in or pushing data out, then obviously if you've got credit notes and things are being cancelled, you want to make that data available. Automatic invoicing has also been improved. They've included additional checks. If that's something that you don't currently use and you potentially might want to have a look at that in more detail, again, please reach out and let us know. And I've just highlighted some of the other areas of enhancements that have been included within some of the latest versions. Some of you may already have these features and may already be aware of them. Some of you may already be on those versions or on these versions or these patches, but are not even aware of these features. And these are just some of them, they're not all of them. So I've just pulled out a couple of them. But the item searches or the searches within the system have been enhanced. I don't know if any of you use one-off suppliers. It's not something that we recommend very often, but if you do, then the searches will include those as well. Internal order numbers are retained. Order numbers back in the day were only visible until the order was approved and then it disappeared, but those are retained for searching now as well. Auto-completes have been enhanced for suppliers, so you don't have to type in the whole name, but it will return the suppliers that match some of the criteria that you're entering or just part of the description that you're entering. Enhancements to the on behalf of feature. So you do have the ability now within Proactis to raise orders on behalf of somebody else. So this is something, again, that has to be activated. And if you haven't had a new features session as part of your patching, you may not be aware that this feature even exists. It's similar to expenses. If you can imagine, you're raising all expense claims on behalf of somebody else that potentially isn't available or doesn't want to access the system. Well, with purchase orders, you can raise orders on behalf of somebody potentially in another department with access to their templates if you've been granted permissions to do so. So as you create that purchase order on behalf of somebody else, it retains their department structure, it gives you their templates. You're basically raising the order for them with their features. As you submit the order, it will go through whatever workflow that user would have sent the order through, and it belongs to them as well. So when that user does log in, they can see their order. They will be able to see who created it, but it will still be their order. So it's a very useful feature. If you had limited people within a department and you're currently logging in and out of Proactis, changing departments at the bottom of the screen to raise orders, and you've got people forgetting, this is quite a useful feature to utilise. But again, if you want to discuss that in more detail, I'd be happy to do so. We can arrange another session for that. Reassign order originator. Reassign order originator, again, is quite a useful utility if you've got somebody leaving the organisation or users that are moving from department to department and they don't want to keep getting tasks about old orders that existed. I think previously it was quite difficult to manage this, and users were setting standing authorisers everywhere and it just became quite messy. So if you want to pick orders up and move them to a different individual within the organisation that's already created as a user, you can do so, and you can do that in bulk as well now. Okay. Order search facility includes multiple status options. It was quite restrictive a little while ago, but it's been enhanced to include lots of additional statuses, delivery statuses, invoice statuses as well. So please take a look at that. Apportionment functionality. That was released, I think, in not this last release, I think the one before, but it isn't available for every client. It is currently, I believe, still being tested by the client that it's been designed for. It is a utility that does need to be activated. It's not something that we can just activate by putting a tick box in. But when that does become available for general use, then obviously we will let you know. But if you are reading about it and you're wondering why you can't see it, that's the reason why. It's because they're not available for all clients currently until it's been fully tested. Okay, just moving on. Invoicing. Invoicing allows you to remember suppliers now. If you're constantly registering invoices and you're having to type in the supplier all the time, that could be quite annoying. So that's been enhanced. It's only for your current session though. As soon as you log out, it will remove that supplier you've been using. There are advanced supplier search facilities. There's extensions to invoice and credit searches. Again, additional search facilities added, where you can search by items, nominals, gross value range options. And the invoice function now shows the total sum of related invoices. Credits. There have been quite a lot of enhancements to do with credit notes over the last year or so, I would say. There are a lot of features that have been added that they won't be active by default. They will change the behaviour of the system. Anyone that's looking to utilise these features, they do need to be tested fully in your test environment, so you're comfortable with them, not because it's going to break anything, that won't happen, but just so that you're comfortable as an organisation with how it's going to behave moving forward with credit notes. Okay, credit notes is actually a session that I am keen to run, a webinar, because I think there's a lot of confusion about credit notes and how they're used, when to use them, how best to use them, you know, what happens with the amount that's been credited, how these features can actually help you with your credit notes, or some organisations don't want them on at all because the behaviour isn't what they want at all. But there is some confusion around ad hoc credit notes, requests for credit notes. We even have some organisations that won't use them at all. I think there's a bit of fear around it. So I am quite keen at some point to run a session in relation to credit notes. As I said, if you think it will be useful, obviously, you know, your feedback is really important to us. If you think that's something that you would make use of, then let me know. Or, you know, if you want a bit more information about that. But basically, Proactis have included additional flags within the company maintenance that can be activated to change the behaviour. Requests for credits can now add the value back to the order. So if there was a credit note that was raised previously, it would kind of, you know, offset that against your PO, and that's no longer available for invoicing. But you can turn on a tick box now, and that value that was credited can now be added back to your PO, so it can actually be re-invoiced as well. Again, re-invoicing orders after raising ad hoc requests for credits is also available. You can cancel unused requests for credit lines, and cancel invoice options has been extended to credits, obviously. But again, just as a caveat, credit functionality requires activation. Don't worry about loading these patches. It's not going to just turn things on for you automatically without you being aware of them. Authorizations, the screen's been enhanced slightly for the approvers so they can see who the transactions are with. Obviously, there are loads of filters on there. I think the majority of you will be familiar with those, but maybe if anyone is upgrading from quite an older version of Proactis, there were no filters, there were no sort columns. It was just a screen with a list of transactions to approve. So obviously those screens have been enhanced. Standing authorizers will now also receive over delivery tasks. So if you are over receipting, a standing approval will also receive those tasks and be notified. PMC. Users are prevented from using an outdated version of the PMC. Okay, so that's been introduced quite recently, I think. And the system control option. So when you're in the web, if you do have permissions, if you've been granted permissions within the admin tab, that drop down, there's a system control option, and that system control option will send you directly to the new web PMC. So there's no need for you to have to go out and find a different URL or save different URLs. If you've got permissions directly from within your browser where you're accessing Proactis, you can just go to admin system control and it will launch the web PMC, and it does it in a different screen, so it doesn't hijack your current screen, so you can use both at the same time, which is useful. But it's permissions based, obviously, bear that in mind, so you won't all have access to it, even if you have had it installed. Okay, release notes. So please have a look at the release notes. If you are going to be patching, we are planning on patching, obviously we can send them to you. We're very happy to do so, but the release notes are all on Freshdesk. So you do have the ability to, obviously you've got logins. There's lots of information on there, not just relating to support tickets. Obviously, there's important announcements. So there is a section that we will add important announcements to. We are sending emails about important announcements as well. I don't know if you've noticed recently, there was one in relation to the Proactis mobile app. So you may want to think about downloading the new version of the mobile app as well, because there were some enhancements in there or some fixes. But Freshdesk, if I just quickly just drill down into it, just to show you the area that I'm referring to. So we've got important announcements, we've got the release notes from previous versions as well. So obviously, you know, please feel free to go back and have a look at the content. There's additional information on there. Obviously, there's multiple pages. I'm just going to open up one of these just very quickly. Okay, so it will just highlight some of the areas that you need to be aware of. I'm just going to close that down, but please feel free to navigate. If you've got any questions in relation to where to navigate to on Freshdesk, how to find the information, again, please reach out either to myself, your account managers, or support. Our support team are there for you to help you. Okay, patching considerations, what to think about when you're patching, the frequency of patching, how often do you need to do it, you know, the documentation, who's going to do it, obviously is quite important as well. So patches are obviously released, made available for TSM clients. TSM have got no control over when these patches are actually made available by Proactis. But we will obviously let you know when they are available. As I mentioned, we're only going to be installing on the latest patch. But we test them. So as we're doing now with this current release, so it was released a few weeks ago, we are testing the wizard. So some patches won't need as much testing. Some patches just contain fixes, you know, software fixes. And there's nothing to activate. There's nothing necessarily that you'll notice that's changed, but they do contain fixes. They won't require as much testing potentially. If there's something specific that a client of ours has reported and we know it's been fixed, then obviously we will test it as well before we advise you that, yep, it's been fixed, you can go away and install it, or we can assist you with installing it. Okay, our recommendation is to update patches twice a year. Some clients are doing it quarterly, which is absolutely fine, but it can be done ideally twice a year. Our support team, just to obviously set the scene, our support team are there to help you with your issues and your queries, your day-to-day issues and queries. They may on occasion assist with certain patching elements, but patching itself has to be carried out by our technical team, who have got a very specific skill set. They patch day in, day out. It's what they specialize in. Patches change. What needs to be, you know, background things to support the patching obviously change. There are new updaters also required. There are often scripts that might need to be run, you know, with these new utilities, new web pages. We've got advanced reporting, we've got web PMCs. All of these require additional installations as part of the patching process. So where our support team may be able to do it, they potentially won't. They will direct you to the technical team. Okay. In the event that you are planning to patch yourselves, which is something that, again, at the moment, we don't recommend you do, because there are lots of things in the background that could affect or could go wrong, I should say, and we have found that recently. So we wouldn't recommend you patch yourselves at the moment. However, in time that might change. But if you did, then we would ask that you do let us know that you're going to be doing it, and you do schedule some resource in the event that something goes wrong. There does need to be a technical resource on hand in case something occurs that isn't what you expect, or you do need some assistance. Okay. And patching, breakdown of tasks. Okay, so with every patch, you will be potentially sent out a quotation or a breakdown of tasks, just to identify what's going to be covered as part of that patching process. Now, it will obviously always depend on the patch you're going from and the patch you're going to. So if you've already had certificates updated and you're on a 20, I can't remember which version it is, 20 version, then you won't need to update certificates. But some clients are on an older version, and that does need to be taken into account. And there's integration changes as well with that as well. So we would factor that into an update. If you haven't installed advanced reporting yet, then we will be installing it as part of your next patch. Some clients opted not to, but we will be doing it. It has to be included. So your reports, again, need to be rewritten, just like your output layouts. In time, those old utilities, Proactis reporting and the output templates utility will become redundant. So obviously, we're preparing for that, and we're trying to move our clients over in advance. Advanced reporting and web PMC, obviously a lot of our clients are having those installed anyway. If you haven't, that will be included as part of your patching process. We now also need to factor in conversion of output layouts. So if you're comfortable enough to do this yourself and you want to, you know, once your system has been patched, you want to use the wizard and run through the utility and convert your layouts independently, then that's fine. We would recommend that you do schedule some time just in case you need assistance, especially if you have scripted layouts, outputs, doing different things like calling different logos and calling different information based on X or Y or whatever it is. Okay, they are quite complex. They're not just standard layouts. So we would recommend that you do have resource to assist with that. Okay. UAT is always scheduled, so we'll do an element of testing. Obviously, you will be expected to test the system. It's your system, so you would have to test as well. And we would recommend that extends into integration testing as well to ensure that the transactions and the data are flowing through Proactis and any third-party systems as expected. Again, output layouts will need to be tested. And the live upgrade, obviously, the live system will be patched once you're comfortable that UAT has taken place and you're happy with the version that's been installed and you haven't identified any issues, or any issues that you did identify have all been resolved, then we can move on to patching your production environment. Again, that will involve installing advanced reporting and the web PMC, or management installation, I've called it there, but we're going to call it web PMC moving forward just to stop any confusion. If you've opted for any new features to be implemented, if you've decided you want to implement additional credit note features and, you know, have those elements enabled, if you've decided you want to enable, you know, raising orders on behalf of different users, and, you know, we're going to activate those flags and set users up, then we will apply those to your production environment as well, unless that's something you want to do yourself. So we'll discuss all of this with you. Okay. Reporting, if you've converted reports and you want them updated again, we'll do that, or we can work with you to do that. So we'll have those conversations with each of our client. Each of you are very different. You know, you've got different requirements, you've got different skill sets within your organizations. You know, so this is just a guide to go by. If you are on our cloud, then obviously you will have your systems patched twice a year. But that would be the standard patching. So we will need to factor in conversion of output layouts as well for those clients that are on our cloud. Okay. And that's the end of my presentation for today. So hopefully it's been useful. I do hope that you've had an insight into what's involved potentially with the latest patch, and it's all made sense.